Hello and welcome to the 1871 podcast with Dylan Kerr, Johnny Hunt and me, Mark Roach. And we're hoping very much that our special guest tonight is former Royals keeper Shaka Hislop. So we're still waiting for Shaka to join the call. We're still waiting for Dylan to join the call, actually. So we ought to mention that Dylan's in South Africa. He's manager of a team out there, Morocco Swallows, and they do have power outages. So we kind of expected this, that maybe for one reason or another, a guest that we've confirmed might not turn up. So let's keep our fingers crossed, and hopefully Shaka will join us on this call. If not, we can hopefully rearrange it for another time. And with Dylan, who knows? Kind of who knows with Dylan anyway in general. But look, before we hopefully talk to Shaka, and if not, we're going to talk about him instead. Let's talk about the current Royals side. So a little summary from me first. A draw at Bournemouth, who are looking at automatic promotion this season, a clean sheet and a win on Saturday at home to Blackburn, who are still, of course, in the playoff places, and a brilliant goal from Josh Laurent. And as if by magic, we're joined now by Shaka Hislop. Hello, Shaka. How are you?
I'm fine, Mark. How are you?
We're okay. We're slightly concerned. We don't know what's happened to Dylan, but we're going to carry on.
We're
going to carry on regardless. And Shaka, we just started off talking about the Reading win at the weekend, and that goal from Josh Laurent, Johnny. You know, you need a bit of confidence to even try that. So that's a good sign, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, a clean sheet, which I think is the first since October, if I'm not mistaken. And the new goalie that came in, we just looked more solid. We looked solid against Bournemouth on Tuesday. It must have been inspired by my walk. We've unbeaten since then.
I was thinking exactly that. And look, there's 8 games to go, and Reading are 5 points clear of Barnsley. And let's not forget, obviously, the teams in the bottom 3 don't usually win, which is precisely why they're in the bottom 3. So that's a decent gap. And we all know what the goal is for Paul Ince, to keep Reading in the Championship. So, yeah. Johnny, as a Reading fan, how are you feeling about, the last 2 performances, going back to that draw at Bournemouth as well?
I think, and I was there for that, and we deserved at least a point. Obviously the early goal again, and here we go. But they played. There's real spirit. There was a real fight, and Ince's goal was absolutely superb, and we could have nicked it. But you take the point, and then Saturday, clean sheet, and I think obviously Swifty coming on, I think probably changed the game. I wasn't there, but from what I gather, him coming on, because he's a class player, he creates chances, and the goal from Laurent was just one of those goals from nowhere or somewhere that you go, wow.
Yeah.
But a clean sheet is huge as well. And, the belief, and it's almost like it's a shame it's the international break, because you might want to just kick on, but that gap's there now. So, they've got the confidence, and, and Ince is obviously doing, he's got the chance to work with the players. Hopefully another 2 weeks will give him a chance to, build again, and hopefully we're confident we're going up rather than down.
And that goal from Laurent reminded me a little bit of Dylan's goal against Stoke in 1994. I don't know if you remember that one. It wasn't top corner, it was bottom corner, but he hit it from roughly the same distance. So I was going to talk to him about that, but we don't know where he is. I'm guessing it's a power outage in South Africa. But
yeah,
obviously, really big game coming up for the Royals at Barnsley, and we'll be talking about that on Friday's episode, where we'll be joined by former Reading defender Andy Bernal. But now it's time for a chat with our special guest this evening, one of the greatest Reading keepers of all time. And Shaka, before we talk about your time with Reading, what do you make of what's been happening with the Royals this season?
I'll be really honest with you, Mark. I haven't had the opportunity to follow Reading results as maybe I should, just given my own obligations with ESPN here. But to what you're saying, I see Reading as a Premier League club in all but name. So to see them down the wrong end of the table, of course, is going to be concerning. But happy that they're able to put together a string of results that at least consolidate their current position in the championship. So hopefully things turn around in that regard, and fans are rewarded for their loyalty.
And, you know, the obvious place to start with you, Shaka, is, you know, when you joined Reading, and, you know, what an amazing time for you personally, but also for Reading. You know, you got promotion in 1994, and then you came so close to promotion to the Premiership the following season. Looking back on your time at Reading, obviously want to sort of ask you about, you know, just missing out on that season and your time at Reading. But when you first joined Reading, what were your thoughts coming into the club in terms of what you could achieve personally, what you felt the team might be able to achieve back then?
Well, you have to remember how I arrived at Reading. I grew up in Trinidad and Tobago, went to university in the US, and was offered which was supposed to be a 2-week trial by Mark McGee and Colin Lee. So I came in with no real expectation, and I'll be honest, I didn't even know where Reading was or anything of Reading's history coming in. I you know, as I say unashamedly, came in completely blind. I was given an opportunity to live a boyhood dream, and that's exactly how I saw it. And this may raise a chuckle, but I remember seeing walking out on the old Elm Park with Mark just after I arrived, and thought, this is the greatest stadium I've ever played in, or will play in, or hope to play in at the time. And that was just kind of my history in the game. As I say, soccer/football hadn't really taken off in the US as it had now. So even the facilities back then left a lot to be desired. So I was just happy for the opportunity and not really knowing what was held in store for me.
And what about, and I know Johnny's itching to ask you loads of questions, I'm sure, Johnny, but that first season when you were at Reading, there's obviously something just clicked with the team, the players. You know, Dylan was there as well. Lots of really good players at that level. And, you know, I said in my introduction, a lot of people regard you as the greatest Reading player of all time. I mean, goalkeeper, and one of the greatest players of all time, I would say as well, in terms of, you know, all-time Reading 11s and that sort of thing. But what was it about your time at the club? Why do you think that the club had all that success that they did? What was it?
Well, it was a couple of things. First of all, it was more my second season. My first season was one I'd prefer to forget, in all honesty. I think my first season, 92, 93, I only played maybe a dozen games or so. Steve Francis was the starting goalkeeper, and I struggled. I struggled with the demands of being a professional, of being in what was a foreign country for the first time, being away from loved ones, and a life that I'd built for myself elsewhere. But I often tell this story that at the end of that first season, I remember going back to Trinidad and Tobago and talking to my dad about my experience. I wasn't enjoying it at all. I really struggled. But I had signed a 2-year deal, and my dad said, listen, the one thing you do is you honor your agreement. You go back up, you finish the second year, and if at the end of that second season you still feel the same way, then come home, or figure out what's next for you. And I say that, keep in mind, I just graduated from university, at a mechanical engineering degree. So I went back up to Reading for the 93-94 season. Colin and Mark McGee called me into the office and said we got a bid from, I think it was Hartlepool, for Steve Francis, and we can't afford to replace him. So you're our starting goalkeeper. It was as simple as that. And the rest, as I say, is history. You know, I played every game that season. I don't think I was great by any measure, but I played my way through. I played my way through that inconsistency. You know, I played my way through bad form, and I played every game that season. And of course we won. We won. We ended up winning the league and getting promoted. I think a lot of the success around that season, and I remember this vividly. Just before the first game of the season, and keep in mind 92-93, I think we finished somewhere around 8th. But just before the first game of the season, I can't remember who it was against, Mark called everybody together and said, I was looking at their opposition and how they play and trying to find a system to play up against them. He said, and then I stopped myself and I thought, they need to find a system to play against us. And I felt a lot changed in that one sentence. As far we went from this team that finished 8th and were a mid-table and flirting with the idea of getting in the playoffs from the season before, to us genuinely believing that we were the team to be beat, that others had to adjust to us. I always remember how that made me feel. I feel the entire squad responded, and we just ran away with the lead that season, that for me, when we talk about the success, and we can talk about the players coming in and how well everything went, but I think everything turned on its head with that one pre-season talk at Coombe Park, the training ground.
Johnny, over to you. I'm sure you've got loads of questions you'd like to ask Shaka.
Oh, geez. Yeah, hi, Shaka. One thing I think you had, and it goes with the shirt that you're wearing at this time, is presence. You just had this, it's almost like you filled the whole goal. And like you were watching, and it was, it's like a brick wall. But the whole team had that, didn't they? From where, did it just something that naturally evolved as leaders on the pitch? Did you kind of work on it, or was it from Mark and then when Jimmy and Mick took over kind of later on?
Yeah, I think it's something that just kind of grew with the team. We had enough players who were there long enough, who understood the club, the city, who grew up right there, such as A.D. Williams, and we're very much leaders on the park itself. And as I say, for me, it was just a matter of playing my way through any loss of form, any bad results, just any injuries, just constantly showing up. And this again may date the game and how long ago it was. But at the time, you were allowed 2 substitutes. Generally, you didn't have a goalkeeper on the bench. So if anything was going wrong, a change wasn't an option. If I got hurt during a game and I had to come out, an outfield player would have to go and goal. So you just and for me, I think it was good that it started in what was then the second division. In today's money is League One, and I was allowed to make mistakes and at more times than not punished for those mistakes. And the higher you go, obviously, we then go to the first division, what is now the championship. You get punished. You get punished more for those mistakes. So it was good for me to start in that lower division and just be allowed to play the game. I also felt, Johnny, that I had the backing of Mark and Colin to do things as I saw fit and to make those mistakes. And I always remember Mark McGee sitting me down and saying, I want you to come for crosses. He's like, you come for crosses. If you don't get there, I will defend you. He's like, but if 10 crosses come over and you come for all 10, you might catch 6, two might fall somewhere else and we clear it. 1 or 2 might go in the goal. Like if you come for none, 4 or 5 will end up in the goal. He's like, so I'm going to back you for that. I'm going to back you to come for crosses and know that you're going to, even though you make mistakes and they may result in goals, it could be twice as bad if you don't. It's like, so you just come, and if you don't get there, I will defend you in the press. And that's all I needed to hear. So now I have the confidence to come for crosses. I have the confidence of the manager that he's going to back me. So now I'm coming for crosses. I take some. You grow in confidence, and that's where that presence come from. That presence come from confidence in your manager, and then as a result, a confidence in your own game.
like in those days, it sounds like we're going back a long time. I guess you wouldn't have sports psychologists and all this stuff we have now. Like, so when
we
like,
didn't have a goalkeeper coach, Johnny. I tell people this all the time. So Peter Benetti used to come. Peter Benetti made former Chelsea legend.
The cat.
Benetti. Yeah. The cat. He made his living going around to clubs. He lived, I believe, in Wolverhampton. So he made his living going around to clubs, doing 1 day a week. And Colin knew Peter and told him about me and got Colin to come down to Reading once a week. And so, you know, again, never mind sports psychologists. We didn't even have a goalkeeper coach, you know. But to be fair, most clubs didn't. Even in the Premier League, they didn't have full-time goalkeeper coaches. That's how long ago it was.
And just talk about the defence. So, you know, we're not quite sure what's happened to Dylan. And as if by magic, here he comes. Here he is. We're just talking about you. How are you?
Yeah, there he is, the one and only.
Get a power out.
We get load shedding here. So
there you go. That was a lucky guess. Well, welcome. Glad you joined us. So we've been talking to Shaka, and as if by magic, I was about to ask him what it was like to play, you know, behind the defence with you and Andy Bernal and AD Williams. So I'm going to let him answer that question, and luckily you're going to be able to hear the answer. So what was that?
Shaka! It was fantastic playing with our side, because I think it was a talented squad, you know, and a squad that I thought had good balance. You had Dylan and Andy Bernal on either flanks, AD, and who was the other centre back? I remember Darius Maka was the other centre back, who was good for me. Keith McPherson and I bonded really well, and given his experience in the game and my inexperience, we're able to have a lot of conversations about the game. And actually, my second season, my second season, so that season that we won the second division, again in today's money, League One. I actually lived in London as Maka did, and would meet Maka just off the M4. So had that opportunity every single day to and from Coombe Park, just to sit with Maka to talk about the game, his own experiences around it. And I thought that was a real valuable learning curve for me as well, you know. So it was, you had AD Williams, who was attracting a lot of attention and kind of was a standout player, you know, tall, moved around the park so well. You had Dylan and Andy Bernal bombing up either flank, and you had that steady presence of Keith McPherson, and it gave me aspect of the game to work behind. You know, the league's best centre back, the league's most experienced centre back, and two wing backs who covered more ground than anybody else in the league.
Dylan, I'm going to let you take over here. The one question that we all want to know is, you know, Shaka's thoughts about just missing out on the Premiership. But kind of over to you now, Dylan. We're going to let you take the stage from here.
Well, hey up, Shaka. Hey. Sorry, Shaq. We get load shedding in South Africa where everything just goes off.
That's all right. Don't worry. I understand only too well.
Yeah, so listen, how are you? Are you looking well?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing good. Hanging in, trying to.
I just think when I joined Reading, you know, one of the things that made me join Reading was I didn't know a soul. I didn't know anybody, and you must have had that when you came over. Like I say, you didn't know anybody really that, you know, you could actually, you know, call a friend or you know say, I can attach myself to him. You know, so how did you feel when you went?
I knew a couple of people in London, but that was it. As it happens, a couple guys I grew up with were living in London, so it was commutable. It wasn't too bad. And then when I first came, as I was mentioning off the top, it was just on a 2-week trial, and they put me up in Diggs, Russell Court Hotel or Russell Street Hotel, some of you saw, and Phil Parkinson stayed in the same Diggs as well. Parky had just joined that off season as well, 92, 93. So I got to know Parky through our shared time there, you know, and again, somebody like Parky who'd been involved in the game and at the level that he had, that was good for me as well. But I've mentioned before you came on that I really struggled my first season to settle down, to acclimatize to what was asked of me for all the reasons that you just said. You know, you're far away from a life that you've known and carved out for yourself, from people you love, friends and family, in what was a strange place, and it took a lot. It took a lot to get used to, you know. And as I said before, I really struggled that first year, but happy that I stuck it out.
Well, you must have got plenty of sleep, because if you share digs with Parky, he can see. He's one person.
That's right. That's right.
Parky
made sure you sleep.
Shaka, just want to jump in again. Let's talk, and Dylan's talked about it. He's got his own sort of personal reasons about what happened with the final and not being involved and all that sort of thing. But what was it like, you know, that second season after you got promoted, getting so close? I think because they restructured the league, didn't they? And Reading finished second. I think 3 points behind. I think it was Middlesbrough won it.
Yeah.
I mean, what was that feeling like? You know, being part of that amazing season, which it was, but then just coming so close and missing out. How did that feel?
Well, it was heartbreaking. And listen, as much as we finished second and any other season we'd have gone straight up. Nobody expected us to finish second. We didn't expect to finish second. I'll be very honest with you. So when I moved over from the US, I left my girlfriend behind. She came to join me, and I eventually proposed, and we were to get married that summer of 1995. And we set a date as June 10th. And I always remember her saying, well, you know, you don't think that might be close to the end of the season? What if we get to the playoffs? I was like, we're not getting to the playoffs. we trying to avoid relegation here.
The playoffs.
Yeah, I'm like, we're trying to avoid relegation. No, again, keep in mind, the season, you know, as much as we'd won, you know, the season before in the old second division, we were mid-table before that. You know, the season before, so I'm thinking, if we finish mid-table, a newly promoted team in the first division, we're taking that. And she's like, well, what if we get to the playoffs? We're not getting to the playoffs. Our season will be finished mid-May or whenever it is. We get back to Trinidad, we get married, no problem. And then there you go. Lo and behold, we go on this incredible run. So I say all that just to say that, you know, as much as you finish second and you feel, on the one hand, you can say, oh, well, you know, any other season, maybe you feel cheated. Nobody expect. I didn't expect us to be up there and I just explained. So you take it for what it is. You know, you take it for what it is. But we get to the playoffs, and we play Tranmere in the playoffs. We go up there. I think we win 3-0, something of the sort. Oh, well, even before that, last game of the season, we know if we finish in second, I don't think we catch in Middlesbrough. The whole squad comes out in sunglasses. Last league game of the season.
Yeah, we did.
The whole team comes out in sunglasses. We just loving it. We think this is great. We were determined to enjoy that experience. And then we go up to Tranmere. We win, I think I'm right in saying, 3-0. Then we come back to Elm Park for a 0-0 in which the crowd never stopped cheering. And in all honesty, I don't think we ever lost control. It was 0-0, but we never lost control of that game. We knew all we had to do was avoid a 3-0 defeat, and we never lost control. So we go to the final against Bolton. So I think the more heartbreaking aspect to it, even more heartbreaking than finishing second, is how that game played out. You know, fantastic day at Wembley. Weather was incredible. We take the lead. We're in full control, but there was always this concern, given Bolton's own experience, that they would finish stronger, you know, and they would have their moments. And it's how we dealt he dealt with that moment. And as much as we missed that penalty to go even further ahead, it came down to the last minutes of the game. And I can't remember when they scored the first, but I think De Freitas scored in the 86th to tie it up. And to this day, I've seen that goal a few times, and I think he caught me. Or I think I'm more. If I were more experienced, I would have saved that. I think he caught me moving in a way that just kind of showed my inexperience in the position, you know. And we spoke about, we didn't have goalkeeper coaches back then. We didn't have that full-time person to lean on and work with. And I think, you know, some of my own experiences told in that second goal. Even if you go back now and look at it, I am still coming out to De Freitas as he hits it. And as a result, I just can't stop my feet. I can't make the save. And I'll be honest, that game going into extra time, I didn't think we had a prayer. The last half hour, if not the entire second half, was all about Bolton. They just had more strength, more legs. They just ran over us in extra time. And in the end, as much as we grabbed one later on to make it 4-3, they were by far the better team in extra time.
Shaka, I just think, you know, because obviously I was on the bench, and well, not stripped, but, you know, I was suited and booted on the bench, you know, and I thought, you know, and this is where you learn things, you know, and this is why I enjoy coaching as I do now. I actually thought at the time, you know, when Noggs came off, I think that because Noggs used to run his socks off, and he did that for 45 minutes, and he stopped Stubbsy. He didn't give Stubbsy a chance. Now, when Quinny came on, right, I just thought that Stubbsy then decided to run the show, which gave McAteer the option to run the show. Mm-hmm. And that was, for me, sat on the bench, you know, trying to get us to, you know, you know, 'cause remember in the extra time, I'm running around Wembley Stadium, you know, trying to get the fans, because everybody's gutted at the time. But I think, and again, it's no disrespect to Quinny, but, you know, I thought when Noggs came off with his calf strain at half time, that allowed Stubbsy to then go forward, which then allowed Jason McAteer to go forward, which then, but that's my opinion. That's, like I said, that's me self-bench.
No, I think that's a valid point. One that, I'll be honest, I've never even thought of in terms of, I could remember the substitution patterns and how it went, you know. Obviously, you just kind of focused on what's in front of you, and you deal with it as best you can, you know. But you're absolutely right. For us to beat Bolton that day, we needed to have legs. And with greatest respect to Quinny, incredible finisher. And as a matter of fact, one of the best finishers I've played with, you know. And I've played with some incredible ones. Listen, there's players like Alan Shearer and Les Ferdinand. There's been incredible finishers in the game. But outside of the Premier League, I don't think I've seen a better, more natural finisher than Jimmy Quinn. Certainly, I've never played with one.
To be fair, Shaka, remember when he kicked Scotty Taylor? You know, Scotty with that annoying laugh when he'd not make it and go, and Quinny didn't like it, and Quinny volleyed his head, and then everybody was like in shock, and we wouldn't have been there. We had the option of, is Quinny staying or Quinny's going? You know, it came to the point where we had to decide as players whether what he did to Scotty was justified and where should he stay. Because we were training at Coombe Park. I can remember it as if it's yesterday. I mean, but we kept Quinny. We kept Quinny because we knew how important he was for us to be as good as we were. Without Quinny, we wouldn't be talking like this now about the championship and the playoffs. You know, so we know how good he was.
How like you played under Mark in that season, then you played under Quinny and Mick. Was there much difference? Or by that time when they took over, it was just you just went on the pitch and did what you did. Does that make sense?
I think it was the case that we just went on the pitch and did what we did. You know, we'd been doing the same things under Mark for 2.5 seasons before he moved to Leicester, and we knew what we would. You know, at that point we knew what we were doing. You know, we were playing well and we were playing with confidence. You know, we're up the top of the first division, and it's just a matter of putting us out there and letting us do as we've done. Let everybody play their natural games. Whether we're talking about Aussie through midfield, you don't ask Simon Osborne to do anything different than he'd been doing, you know, all season long. You know, we just went out and continued to do as we had been.
Johnny, the biggest thing about it, and I can't wait till my book comes out. I know Andy Bernal's done one, so Shaka he'll have a book out before me. But we had a great team. We had some great characters, and we literally became, you know, Reading people. We would go out to Utopia every Wednesday night without fail.
Speak for yourself. Speak for yourself, Dale.
We'll not tell the story about it. We'll not go to the story with you and the bouncer.
Oh, please do. We've got time.
Well, we'll do a whole episode for that. But look, chaps, we're running out of time. But look, Dylan, have you got one last question for Shaka?
When are you coming back to the UK, Shaq? Or when are you getting me a job in? When are you going to get me in a job in America? That's the biggest question.
How many questions is that? I'll be back in the UK. I have to be back in the UK at some point in the next couple of months. For those who may not know, I was awarded the Freedom of the City by Newcastle, so I have to come back. to the UK for that. They don't have a date just yet. They're just hoping to get it done before the end of May. So I'm hoping to hear about that sooner rather than later. And then I want to bring the family back at some point over the summer. We haven't all been back. My 4 girls were all born in England. We have a boy who was born here in the US, but we haven't been back with the entire family since we left in 2006. We want to make that effort to come out and just take the kids around, show them the old haunts, where they were born, the houses we all lived in, stuff like that.
Shaka,
so it must be a freedom of Reading, isn't it?
Shaka, unfortunately, Utopia's not there anymore. Which is
unfortunately for Dylan, maybe.
Unfortunately for Dylan.
I was never in there.
Surely, lads, there must be a freedom of Reading as well going on while you're over, isn't there? Come on.
I have no idea. I'll be there. I'm going to drive through Reading. That's about all I can promise right now.
Well, look, we're out of time now, Shaka. Just really want to thank you for being a guest. Proper Royals legend from certainly myself and Johnny going back as Reading fans for 4 years.
Thank you very much.
I don't know about Johnny, but you get in my team in the number 1. So,
absolutely.
So Shaka,
that'll do nicely. Thank you very much, guys. It's good to have you.
Absolutely brilliant.
Good speaking with you.
Enjoyed that. And our
Shaka.
He's trying to put me off the finish bit now. Anyway, our guest on Friday is your former teammate, Shaka. It's former Royals defender Andy Bernal, who's got plenty to talk about with his role that he had with David Beckham as well in his book, right. Dylan said. So join us on Friday from 6:30 p.m. And don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at 1871 Podcast. But for now, thank you, take care, and good night to all of you who are listening. Thanks to Johnny, thanks to Dylan. Glad you could join us, Dylan, and especially to you, Shaka. Really appreciate you being on. Thank you.
My pleasure. Good speaking to you all.
Shaka, you stay well. Give my love to Desha.
Will do. Cheers, guys. See you later.
Take care, Shaka.
Thank you.
Keep up, mate.
Bye.
You say bye.